Welcome to Violin Adventures number 232. First, we're going to take a peek outside at the beautiful blossoms, and next we'll get back to work on our 1700's Gagliano cello and our 1800's Hopf violin. Before we start the week, let's get some beautiful Okay, it's time for the clamps to come off so we can shape this beautiful bass bar. Isn't this a beautiful sight? There's a beautiful bass bar. Now I'm going to smooth this down, cut down the ends, and then we'll tap it. Okay, we've got our bass bar in, and this is one thing I enjoy. It's just, not only is it there for sound, but I think the more beautiful you make the shape, the better sound you can get, really, because you work on taking off what isn't necessary. So we've got some good tone there. This is the next problem we need to deal with, is this poor peg box. It's missing a scroll, and you can see how little wood is in there. So we have a plan. Okay, so looking at this very sad peg box, in a way it's a good thing because we can make this a lot stronger. So I have here the broken scroll from the top that goes right here, but since it's broken right at the holes of the upper hole, it's going to be a very weak repair. So my plan is to knock off this scroll and to save and graft it onto this piece, and then graft this piece onto this peg box. And we won't use any of the neck, but what we're using is the peg box. That's the most important part, is to keep this strong to hold the pegs. But we also want to save the scroll, because the scroll is the workmanship of the maker. It's like his signature, so we want to save that for sure. So just to reiterate, I'm going to take this scroll off, graft the old scroll on, and then we'll work on grafting this into this top peg box. All right, I've been working on fitting this piece to this piece just to have a good contact with the wood. And now I'm going to prepare for a dowel to go through the two pieces. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how will we be clamping this. And because it's a circle, because it's uneven on the side, and because a clamp won't hold on to the circle right where we need it, I'm gonna cut out two pieces of wood that I can counter push against this. So that's what we're doing now, is we're planning the shape of this wood. I need to support this here because the ears of the scroll are so tall. There we go. And I kind of want this kind of a clamp, which nothing holds there, it just slips off. Okay, I haven't glued this up yet. I've just gotten the pieces of wood in here to hold this on nice and secure. And while the glue is warming up, I'm going to mark do this with my right hand, it will be a little better. Okay, we'll make marks so that we know we're putting the pieces of wood in the right place. And I'll take this all apart. We'll get the glue in there and we can glue this scroll onto a new peg box. Okay, our glue is nice and hot, and I'm going to okay, that's holding really well, and I may not even need clamping, but I'm going to clamp just to make sure. All right, we're just going to leave that for 24 hours. A Violin Bow Repair. Okay, we're in the bow rehairing and repair department. Now, if you have a bow and your tip, this is the tip. Usually this is made out of bone, although now we're going to more synthetic material. But if you bring your bow in and this bottom half is broken out, the whole tip has to be replaced. And why is that? Because the rehair won't stay in. So I have a bow here where the bottom tip was broken off, and what that entails. And first we have a piece that we have to fit it onto the bow, because every bow has a different shape on the surface of the bow. So first this little piece has to be fit onto the bow. We glue it on, and then we shape this. This is a blank. We shape this to the shape of the bow. Then we're still not done. After that, we have to hollow out this part right here. We have to cut that out of the bone or whatever we have, make a channel there for the block to go in. So it takes a lot of fitting and carving to get this ready. Since all bows are different, we can't just slap a piece of material on there and it'll fit and all be ready. Each part has to be fit. And what makes it very hard is when you're fitting to this, you don't want to scrape up or scratch up the original bow head. So that's what I'm doing here. The first step is to glue a blank on here, and then we'll fit it. Okay, that didn't even record. So I wrapped the tip, gluing it onto the bow, wrapped it in this little contraption, and we're going to let that dry before we start shaping it. But now you can see why it's a very intricate and specialized repair. And so it may cost a bit to get your tip replaced. On to the Hopf violin. Okay, we're working on the Hopf violin. I'm cutting out the block up here, getting ready to set the neck. Let's see, maybe we can repair this little crack together. So we have here a piece of the rib that is out. If you can, I cleaned it up because it was very jagged, and now I've cut a little piece, 2 pieces of rib to fit in there, just like that. Okay, and we'll let that dry, and then I can take it down, and our hide glue is hot. And while I was waiting for the glue to warm up, I was going around the edges, kind of just scraping off all the old glue and wood putty that was just here and there all over the instrument. So it's looking pretty good. The neck, I now have it ready to fit. So we're going to fit the neck. Now there's a couple little places, one right here and one up here, where probably Grandpa or great-grandpa repaired it in his lifetime. So I'm going to leave those there because that's part of the history of the instrument. But I'm putting in a new little piece up here where there's a big gaping space. We're going to let this dry overnight, and hopefully tomorrow we can set it up. Back to work on our Hopf violin. The next thing this violin needs is new pegs. And I need to readjust these holes so they'll hold better. This is the old style where the second hole is so much smaller than the first hole that the pegs don't like to stay. Okay, we've got our Hopf violin set up. We're going to play it, see how it sounds. It has a very pleasant, smooth tone. And of course, this is the one that didn't have a real bass bar. It was carved out of the top. So it's got a new bass bar. So that's going to have to wake up the molecules in the wood to start vibrating. But it's got a good start. Time for a story. All right, we're picking up our reading in Violins and Violinists by Franz Farga, and we're reading about Paganini. We're in the middle of his story. So starting on page 170. 6 months after the French July Revolution of 1830, he arrived in Paris, which was still in the throes of political excitement. On March 8, he gave his first concert in the Grand Opera before the royal family and a distinguished audience. His success was as great as ever, and the critics were full of praise. At his first Paris concert, he played his E minor concerto. At the second, a D major concerto, which he had composed in Germany, but the first performance of which he had reserved for his Paris public. Altogether, he played 11 times in the opera, which resulted in a net gain of 165,741 francs for the maestro. Later in the same year, he visited London. For this occasion, he had again composed a new concerto in B minor, which made an enormous impression. He also played his variations on the Italian folk song, "O Mama," which better became known under the title Carnival in Venice. He had signed on for 5 concerts only, but the rush was so great that he had to announce his final concert again and again until between May and the end of August he had given 15, all in the Royal Opera House. The takings were 9,000 francs, 2/3 of which were the virtuoso's share. He also played in the houses of the aristocracy, touring England and Ireland for 4 months after his London appearance. Altogether, he netted more than 20,000 francs in the British Isles. In March 1832, he was back in Paris. Cholera was raging, and he gave a concert in aid of the victims' families. With 10,000 francs net proceeds, he repeated his usual success in 6 more concerts. In between, he revisited London and also played in Belgium and Holland. He returned to Italy in October 1834 after 6 years' absence. His notary had in the meantime purchased several houses and estates on his behalf. Paganini chose the villa near Parma as his favorite residence. He planned to publish his compositions and to found a conservatory where he intended to take the violin class on himself in order to pass on his secrets to the rising generation. At that time, ex-Empress Maria Louisa, Napoleon's first wife, was living in Parma. She heaped presents on Paganini and made him director of the court theater, but Italy appeared to him too small for his genius. In summer of 1836, he returned to Paris, where he took part in the foundation of a casino, which was to bear his name. He intended to play there several times each week, a plan which was never carried out, as he was not strong enough to play so often. The casino was a financial failure which cost him a great deal of money and involved him in lawsuits damaging to his artistic reputation. From then on, he was unable to appear in any concert hall because of the throat disease, which almost robbed him of speech. His violin was no longer exerting its spell on the masses. Greed and jealousy began to attack him wherever he went. He was said to be exceptionally mean, yet an example to the contrary has been reported. Hector Berlioz, France's great composer, who was for a long time ignored and misjudged in his native country, suffered very much from the ignominy caused by the booing of his music in the Paris Grand Opera. When he conducted his symphony Harold in Italy, a few days later at the conservatory, Paganini climbed onto the platform, went down on his knees before the composer, kissed his hand, and whispered with a rattle in his throat, "You have surpassed Beethoven." The next day, Berlioz received a letter from Paganini in which the virtuoso declared that now that Beethoven was dead, only Berlioz could carry on the master's work. As a token of his admiration, Paganini sent him 20,000 francs to enable the composer to work for some time in peace. This generous deed was interpreted in many various ways. Liszt relates that Paganini wanted to prove by his present that his enemies were wrong in calling him mean. Another, rather malicious story explains that the money came from Senator Burton, owner of the newspaper, and that Paganini only lent his name to the presentation. This story, however, does not explain why the senator, who was very vain and liked publicity for his paper, should have hidden behind the virtuoso. Besides, Burton was well known as Berlioz's patron. Paganini himself said, "I did it for Berlioz and for myself. For Berlioz, because this genius was wearing himself out, fighting against the jealousy and ignorance of his fellow men, and for myself, because posterity will thank me for what I did." And we're going to stop there. We're coming near the end of Paganini's life, and then it's going to talk about his health. We'll pick up here where we left off next time. Freddie wants to chat.
Hi, I Freddie, and this week is Passover, so we made some unleavened cake. It is so good. Yum!
All right, I was recording, sharing with you my special dessert for Passover because we spend a whole week eating only food that is unleavened. So it's fun to be creative and figure out what you can eat. And so I was here showing you that I'm making a matzah cake just like I did before last year. But this time I'm changing it up a bit. So I am dipping the matzah unleavened bread in orange juice and then layering it with whipping cream on the top. The whipping cream I make from whipping cream whipped with honey, because we know honey is so much better than sugar. So we have honey here. Whip that up, and then between the layers I'm adding pecans or almonds. So we've got our matzah cake here. And then I have in this pan, I've melted sugar-free chocolate chips with butter. And I'm going to pour that over the top as soon as it thickens up a bit. And here's what it looks like once it's been plated after it's been in the refrigerator for a few hours. It is so soft and tasty.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
The Hebrew Minute. Hashem ori vayishi mimi ira Hashem ma'oz chai mimi echad. The Lord, or Hashem, is my light and my salvation. whom shall I fear? Lord or Hashem is the strength of my life. Whom shall I dread? If you know where this is found, please leave it in the comments below. Here's a beautiful Friday with the birds singing, and you can hear the lawnmowers in the distance. The grass is growing and the trees are starting to bud. There's some maple buds on here. Here's an apple blossom. Here we are inside the shop. Let's look at the projects. Here's our 1700's Gagliano cello. Next week, work on taking out this dark spot and putting some support in here. Also taking out the dark spots in here. And then we'll be ready to close that up. We're also working on grafting this peg box into the cello neck. Here's our Hopf violin, ready to go back home and start singing. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your wonderful comments and your thumbs up. Thank you to the new subscribers. And until next time, bye. We're playing the Hopf violin.